expedite the various tasks. That the event took place at all is almost a miracle, and is entirely due to the profound involvement of the larger community and it...
You really ought to attend that fair. I'm sure you'll get some marvelous ideas for your next exposition.
Philip and I are seriously considering it.
I'll be sorry to miss it, but I've already got plane tickets for next week.
Oh gee, don't stop. I didn't mean to put an end to the conversation.
Those people are always late.
I thought the meeting started at 2.
It's 10 after 2.
Is everyone here already? I thought we were early.
You're not.
Then let's get this show on the road. I take it the purpose of this meeting is to discuss what went down 2 weekends ago.
Is that the purpose of the meeting?
There are far more important things to talk about.
But I thought...
Lyman has a friend, a painter, who was scheduled to have his first show in a downtown gallery. It was to open in a week, but for some mysterious reason, the gallery turned him down at the last minute. So, Lyman suggested he might be able to rent space from the Illyria Street Commune. Only this room, obviously.
But she can't. What about our party?
Hey, wait a minute. Tony and Donna aren't here yet.
How long are we supposed to wait?
Not long, Philip. Olympia is talking about renting this place.
Are you crazy? She can't rent it. It's in all our names.
I meant all of us.
What's going on here? I thought we were going to talk about certain critiques.
We've already discussed that.
We put our critiques into action, Tony.
What the hell does that mean, Barry? And what do you mean? You've discussed that already? Did you resolve it all in 15 minutes? Grover alone.
I started to bring it up.
I hope we don't let this meeting degenerate into a shouting match. We were discussing the possibility of renting this room to an artist.
You can't, and that's that. Let's talk about real things now.
We can't, Tony? Don't you think it's up to the entire commune to decide that?
May I ask, have we ever turned anyone down before? I understand the principle of openness.
Wait, who the hell are you?
Oh, I'm terribly sorry. This is Earl. He's gotten deeply involved in the commune and has numerous ideas on how to improve it. Earl, this is Tony. Shall we go around the room saying our names?
I don't believe in it.
In answer to your question, Earl, no, we've never excluded anyone before. But then, I don't think we've ever gotten that kind of request before.
How does it feel to be invisible?
It must be the same thing as being dead.
Of course, my friend agrees to pay whatever reasonable rent we ask. He also assured me he would rectify any changes he felt necessary to make.
Of course.
Do you need the money or something? Why are you doing this? Are you going to become landlords?
No, Maddie, we don't need the money.
I personally don't think we should become landlords.
Then why are we discussing this?
I'd better let Dan get in on some of this. I can see I botched something by keeping my mouth shut when it started.
We're discussing the principle of excluding someone.
Oh, is that what we're discussing? In that case, let me bring up some cases that aren't hypothetical.
We haven't settled this matter, although I personally feel that since we don't need the money...
That's true. Philip made a good point.
Fine, I'll tell him that the commune decided against it.
What's next on the agenda?
Have you gone off your rocker? Since when do we have an agenda?
Well, I've never in my life.
I can't imagine what's gotten into you today, Tony. You're so uptight. Obviously there's no agenda. We haven't become a parliament. That was just Philip's way of asking if there were other matters that concern the whole group.
We must make a terrible impression, Lamia. We're not usually so rowdy. I hope we don't spend any more time on trivialities. I wanted to bring up a question we've been discussing for years, and one which certainly does concern the whole commune. That's the question of space and light for our work, our displays, and even for parties. Several years ago, Grover suggested the possibility of enlarging this room. This wall, for instance, blocks direct access from the front room to the kitchen.
If we could knock a 3-foot hole through it, put a doorway right here.
You better not put it there, Barry. That's where the chimney passes through.
What about putting it over here?
To hell with the 3-foot hole. Why don't we knock the whole wall down? The room between here and the kitchen serves no other purpose than to accumulate garbage anyway. Once we took care of the kitchen wall, we could have light coming in from both sides. Think of all the shelves we could put in, and our work area would be twice as large as it is now.
How do you propose to remove this wall, Grover?
Easiest thing in the world if you've got the right tools. Isn't that so, Steve?
I guess so, if you've got the right tools.
Mm-hmm. Let me see. Shouldn't take but 3 or 4 hours to take the whole thing down, patch up the paint and rough spots, and throw out the crud in that room.
But how?
How? That's the least of it. Nowadays, they've got all kinds of machinery for crap like that. They've got these small bulldozers. Isn't that right, Steve?
How would you get a bulldozer in here, Grover?
Let's see. That's it. We remove the front window. Nowadays, they've got demolition units rigged just like those snow removal outfits that melt the snow and cart it off as water. With that kind of unit, we could get the wall down in 2 seconds flat, and then we'd apply this huge suction unit.
And you cut it all off as liquid plaster, wood, nails?
That's right. And while we're on that front window...
Have you gone out of your mind, Grover? Why are you talking about tearing this place apart 3 weeks before our party? I thought there were all kinds of other questions.
Who's that?
Another crank.
Another what?
Another crank!
Dan, do you think we should never make changes in the space where we live and work?
Somehow we got into this other subject, Dan, and the fact is that Lyman here has a whole theory about that picture window.
I wouldn't exactly call it a theory. It's my feeling that if you're going to use this room as a display area, the presence of that window defeats your purpose.
If we're going to do what?
What Lyman means is this, Dan. With that window there, we can't focus on the spectator's eye on our work. Now, if I had my business laid out off those shelves, I sure as hell wouldn't want the spectator's eye wandering off to look at the landscape.
But you had me remove my plants because you said you wanted more light.
That's right, Donna. But that was years ago, and I forgot it would be natural light that streamed through that window. What art needs is artificial light.
Grover, you are such an incredible bullshit artist.
Is that really true, Tony? I hear Grover trying to make the commune's exposition even livelier and more meaningful than the first one.
Holy shit! I've got an appointment 10 minutes ago. If anyone gets that demolition equipment, be sure to let me know. I'd like to be in on that.
That's the sickest farce I've ever seen.
Who's he?
Yet another crank, lady. This place is infested.
I don't understand what you're calling a farce, Ben. We've been discussing improvements that have been needed for at least 5 years, and I personally think the various suggestions are creative and exciting.
Even though you know it's all bullshit.
Do you think it's bullshit, Tony, to improve the space where we spend most of our working hours?
I don't want to get sucked into the debate about walls. I have my own opinion about its significance.
Could you give us all a glimpse?
No, I couldn't, Olympia. Something else bugs me. I thought there were some things we all took for granted. I thought some things were repulsive to all of us. I thought we made certain compromises only in order to survive. Recently, I learned...
If this is the beginning of another arid political debate, I'm leaving.
Wait a minute, Philip. I'd like to know what Ben learned recently.
I heard you were applying for a state grant to the arts.
Where did you hear that?
Cut the innocent act, Barry. I heard about that grant over a year ago.
Ben, you seem so agitated. I've never seen you like this. Are you really so upset about a non-existent grant? Or are other things bothering you?
Perhaps your own political frustrations, Ben?
I don't understand what's going on. Olympia, you talked to me about such a grant 2 years ago. I didn't see what was wrong with accepting it, but why are you three acting as if Ben were crazy?
Oh, Donna, I didn't know you were here. Yes, that's just the point. All the people in this room have been talking about that grant for the past 2 years. That's why I don't understand Ben's surprise, his sudden agitation.
Oh, 2 years? Then how come this is the first time I've heard anything about it?
Where have you been, Tony?
I haven't heard about it either.
Well, now everyone is acting as if I'm crazy. Dan and Donna seem to have known all about it.
Who else knew all about it?
Apparently, everyone in the community except you, Tony. I myself discussed this question with almost everyone in this room.
I don't see the relevance of this discussion.
Do the world a favor by dropping the word community, Olympia. Your newest circle of friends, concerned as they are with our displaying and marketing our commodities, that's not community. It's the exact opposite.
You're hurting people's feelings, Ben.
A state-subsidized art business. That's not community. That's what tears community to shreds, which has been happening right here. It's like that demolition machine Grover invented earlier.
Are you finished?
You don't even know what you're talking about, Ben, and this isn't either the time or the place.
When is?
Labyrinthine. That's what this discussion is. Byzantine. Ben, you sound just like a political crank resurrected from the 60s.
Surely you're exaggerating, Philip, but honestly, Ben, your outburst certainly does seem irrational and unmotivated. The fact is, and you know it, we've never received any type of grant from the state, and we're not getting such a grant now.
Which means, Ben, that there's nothing to discuss, and you've been wasting everyone's time.
What happened? Did the state turn you down?
Why, Dan, I don't understand your tone. You thought the grant was such a good idea when I discussed it with you.
I hadn't thought out its implications.
Excuse me for intervening on this matter, but this debate seems to be taking place in a vacuum. Many people here seem unaware that there are no implications to this grant. There are absolutely no strings attached. And, secondly, we did not get turned down. Many of the commune's programs are eligible for funds earmarked for precisely such programs. We didn't receive the grant for this fiscal year only because we submitted the application too late.
Lyman, this isn't the time or the place for that.
I'm thoroughly confused. Your words to me, Dan, I don't remember them exactly, were, what's wrong with us ripping off the state for some bread if we can get away with it?
I guess the verb tripped me up. I should have asked, what's wrong with us being financed by the state?
I don't see the difference.
It's what Ben was trying to say. You get so you depend on the state to support a community independent of the state. And finally, you make friends with bureaucrats like these two dudes to help you apply for larger grants.
I won't have you insulting our friends, Dan. They have as much right in this community as you do. And it so happens I felt more comfortable working with them than I ever felt with you.
When will you introduce us to the rest of your community, Philip? The politicians on the city council? The corporation directors?
I haven't met any of them yet.
But you'll call them the community as soon as you meet them.
I'm not able to contend with this harangue of political rhetoric, and its volume hurts my ears. I take it that the meeting is over. Are you coming, Olympia? Barry?
I'd like to get to the root of these rumors being spread behind my back. People should really have come to me first.
We'll be at Lyman's.
You asshole! It's your ignorance that makes you shout about politics as if it were something you didn't do. You and Olympia are the biggest politicians here.
Tony said it. You and Philip have been throwing the word politics in my face for years, but I've never in my life seen a dirtier pair of politicians than you two. I've never been to a political meeting where I felt more manipulated than at this afternoon's wall-moving session. I've never seen one person wind up another the way Grover was wound up. Machines that liquefy walls. Jesus, now that you and Philip...
Is that what I stayed to hear? Have I really been throwing things in your face for years?
Now isn't the best time for you and Philip to denounce politics. You'd learn to cover your game better if you studied a little politics, like the politics of friends.
Please leave our friends out of this. It's no secret you have no great love for them.
I'm about to split, Olympia, but first I'd like to tell you something I read about the politics of friends. Long ago, the members of ancient Macedonian tribes called each other friends. Later, each tribe started to have a matriarchal chief, and her advisors were called the friends of the tribe. Finally, one of the chiefs became queen, and her consort became king, and the top officials of the court were known as the Friends of Macedonia. Friendship wasn't a personal relation anymore. It became an office to which you got appointed by the queen or her consort. If a friend was ousted, he was considered an outsider, a traitor, a crank. Your namesake was the most famous of the Macedonian queens. She went through friends the way we go through Kleenexes. She blew her nose in them and threw them away. That's about all I had to say. Goodbye, everybody.
And good riddance.
People who never do anything around here come up with the most brilliant critiques.
You got a bucket of shit in your mouth, Barry, and you know it.
You know something? I've been asking myself all afternoon. What's Ben doing at this meeting? You announced years ago you didn't want anything more to do with this place.
Why do you say that with such glee? If you're thinking good riddance, why are you pretending to reproach me with it? And why don't you bother to remember the circumstances in which I said that? You had spilled shit all over it.
You're not going to dig up that little accident again.
Maybe it's because of little accidents that so many people are turned off from working here.
Why bring up the past? Can't we just let bygones be bygones? We've always had respect for you, Ben. All of us. We respected your opinions, even if we didn't always adopt them, and whether or not you helped with the work. I personally was almost heartbroken when you turned against the community. If you'd stayed with us, we would never have waded through a mass of bureaucratic forms to apply for a state grant, because you would have made the implications of such an application perfectly clear to us. I'd still like you to clarify some things for me. Every person in the commune has accepted checks from the state. If I'm not mistaken, even you.
You know damn well.
Of course I know. We all know. You've collected monthly welfare checks from the state ever since I've known you. You haven't drawn a paycheck for the past 8 years.
If you don't know, or no longer know the difference...
Of course, Ben, your illness. No one can reproach you with that. But I don't understand is how you can sit there and lecture to us about the evil we would be if any of us ever accepted a check like that.
Can I talk now?
Of course, Ben. I asked for your opinion.
I've been postponing a decision for a couple of years. I finally made up my mind this afternoon, while Grover was demolishing the wall in the front window. I'm going to leave this house as soon as I get my suitcase packed.
Surely you don't think we were trying to push you...
I'll be moving to Kentucky. Not to a commune, not to join striking miners, just a shack with a yard.
What about your paper?
Thanks for your concern, Olympia. The paper can survive without me. Some 6 years ago, this place, the commune, became my main commitment, but that ended some time ago. I'd like to make sense out of what happened to us during the past 8 years, to figure out how much was real and how much an illusion I kept reviving in my own mind. I don't think it was all illusion. I'm fairly sure that not a single one of us, except maybe Philip, started out wanting to be a potter or a painter or a writer or any other thing that fits into the slots of this society. We didn't start out being an artist's commune, just a commune. We only wanted to be human beings to each other. We each had something to give, but nothing to sell. At least nothing to sell voluntarily. We accepted paychecks and welfare checks because otherwise we couldn't survive in the prison we're still in. You used to know that, Olympia. I fantasized that we didn't create this commune as a further extension of that prison, but as a break from it.
That wasn't a fantasy, Ben. That's truer now than it ever was.
I fantasized that we didn't want to sell our creations, our ideas, our dreams as if they were merchandise, and that this was the free space where we didn't have to do that. The free space where we didn't have to do pottery displays or art shows or whatever the contract called for. The free space where we could share what each could give. But that was just my own private fantasy.
How could you say that, Ben? Barry, Philip, and I have lived by those principles.
Philip's principles came out of his mouth this afternoon. If he didn't sell himself before, it was only because there weren't any buyers. If he treated us as human beings, it was only because he hadn't met the better set yet. As soon as the first opportunity appeared, Philip was ready to sell himself and the commune, and to throw the rest of us in on the bargain, or else dispose of us as trash.
You're raving, Ben. You couldn't be more wrong about Philip.
I don't know where you're coming from, Barry, nor where you're going. I was talking to Olympia. Sure, I'm raving. Weren't we called cranks this afternoon? Isn't that what cranks do? Rave? Dan was right, Olympia. You and Philip don't reject politics. You chaired the meeting, intimidated the opposition, determined the agenda, excluded all relevance, squelched all critique. You've got so much politics the whole house reeks of it. Principles are what you and Philip don't have. Why not call things by their names? What Philip can't stand about Dan or Tony or the rest of us is that there are certain things we won't sell for any amount of money.
Are you done? I promised to meet Philip.
Almost. I'd like to ask a favor. If you continue not to see the difference between a welfare check and a state grant to an art bazaar, between a commune and a merchandising mart, between a relatively free human being and a salesman, forget that I was ever a friend of yours. That's the favor, because I intend to forget that you were ever a friend of mine.
Ben?
Donna, I'm exaggerating. It wasn't all hell. I won't ever forget the moments I spent with you. But by staying on here, you'll just get, oh, hell. You've got to figure that out for yourself.
You'll never make it alone. Ben, take me with you.
Man, what a stuffed shirt he's become.
He's no great loss either. Let's go.
Olympia?
What is it, Donna? I'm in a hurry.
Why didn't you tell me you were doing the planting last Sunday?
Didn't anyone tell you?
You had to tell me, Olympia, since you decide.
Donna, how can you expect people to keep telling you about events if you never show up to any of them?
I haven't missed a single planting, ever, since I bought the house 10 years ago. I look forward to it all year long.
None of us can tell what you look forward to, Donna, since none of us are mind readers. I personally know that you were told about at least 5 work sessions, and there was neither hide nor hair of you at any of them. How can you expect us to keep considering you a working member of the commune? Admittedly, you still live here, but you've become marginal.
Me? Marginal?
Well, maybe that's not the word, but I don't see how you can blame me. Honestly, you go to the bar whenever you feel like it. You're not obliged to tell me or anyone else. And I do my gardening whenever I feel like it. As if I were under some kind of obligation to tell her when I intended to brush my teeth or make my bed.
Everything we built together is your garden now, isn't it, Olympia?
Hostility still survived. It was only a diminishing residue. At last, the isolated fragments were unified into a community.
Yes. Yes, I'm her sister. What hospital? Oh my god, wait while I get a pencil. Could you tell me the wing and room number again? I'll be right there. Olympia!
Telephone for me?
No, it's Donna. She's in the hospital. She was hit by a car.
Really?
She tried to commit suicide.
I'll tell Philip. Maybe he'll be interested. Like bees to flowers, the ice was broken. 2 members of the community joined us. Then
I can't get over it. How can someone build all that and then smash it? All those friendships, all those dreams, all that work.
I read about this monarch who had his eye cut out, his collarbone fractured, his hand and leg mutilated.
I heard about a woman who did everything for her kid until he started to become independent. Then she hacked him to death.
Something's missing, isn't it?
Steve went with her once, you know. She was younger than I am, but married. How does this joint fit, Steve? Oh, I remember.
You two be sure to drop over, you hear? I'm home just about all the time. It would just be such a shame to let everything die out.
We will, Maddie, but it'll have to be on a weekend. We're both working now.
So's Dan. He's typesetting books now. It's a lot more interesting than his previous 2 jobs.
That can be a trap, too.
In what sense, Steve?
Well, it's interesting, but it's not your interest. It's good enough, but it's not good, and you keep on doing it.
I think we're ready.
Grover, Leon, Roseanne, supper's ready.
We'll be right down.
Did they exclude you, Sharon?
I didn't want to be in it. Without Alec or Lisa, it's not the same.
Lisa just insisted on going to her girlfriend's. I'm sorry.
Don't be. Lisa's so much older now. I'd feel embarrassed.
Grover! For crying out.
I'm on my way.
I bet. And the kids?
Well, Leon got us started watching this program and we all got engrossed.
In the play?
Oh, Christ, the play. You know, I can do this gag I did once when...
Skip it, Grover.
Leon!
Come in!
Maybe this'll give us an appetite.
I sure need one.
When Ben first came here, she called him the Underground.
Ben thought she was an heiress. Can you imagine?
She told me he made her feel like an heiress. Made her feel like giving her fortune to some cause. Only she never had a fortune.
He thought she was renting him the maid's room.
Yeah, she was a good kid. I know this one woman who had an accident when...
Oh, shut your trap, Grover.
It's almost over. Aren't we trying to do the same thing that they did at their expo?
Only we don't have Lamy.
Hey, wait a minute. This isn't...
It isn't, Grover. We're trying hard, but we're not succeeding. We cooked Ben's meal, but Ben won't help us eat it.
Alec was 8, Leon was 7, and Lisa was 6 when we made that stage. I had just turned 19, but I was the youngest of the 4.
Donna's gosh is in the air, and I keep looking around for her.
Philip accused me of politicizing her death by calling it suicide.
Does Barry know?
He was already on his trip when it happened. Poor Barry.
Misplaced pity.
I'm not sure. He kept talking about having the space to come back to. Maybe he was just trying to be sure it was still there when he came back, only he didn't know how to do that.
Maybe.
I thought he knew everything when he first brought me. I was all excited and afraid. He told me police sirens would wake me in the middle of the night, and their guns would shoot holes in the walls, and I have to run down through secret passageway and then through the street sewers with my machine gun.
Did you really believe that?
I couldn't get over how peaceful you all were, how quiet the house was. I tried to put it all in my painting because I couldn't say it in words. What I expected, and what I found, and what I had wanted, but no longer did because I knew I'd hate it when I got it.
Hell, I remember that painting. That was the best.
I don't think you ever saw my painting, Grover. I think only Ben understood the things I was trying to say. They're the kinds of things Steve and I can talk to each other about, sometimes without even saying any words, sometimes by deciding to go out and eat, sometimes only by looking at each other. I never dreamed my painting would be graded without anyone seeing it, like it was for school. C for grammar and E for punctuation. I thought I had quit school.
Ben said something similar a few days ago.
Did you see Ben?
I finally reached him by phone a few days ago. I tried to talk to him into coming to our memorial for Donna.
And he couldn't?
Wouldn't. He said he felt guilty and didn't want to infect us with his guilt. He also said he was writing her a memorial of his own.
What else?
He said he couldn't go back to the origin because there was no origin. We had started something beautiful, but none of us knew it. None of us supported it. None of us protected it, and none of us developed it. We had involved ourselves in a project, but none of us carried it. Except maybe Sharon and Donna, he said. Donna carried it in her eyes. She tried to speak to us with her eyes, with the smile in her eyes. But none of us knew how to hear her. It sounded mystical to me when Ben said it.
Ben didn't know how to hear her either, did he, Tony? Steve did, and I took Steve away from her.
I hope I'm not imposing. I'm sorry to do this when Olympia and Philip are away, but it was my only free night.
What are you about to do?
Lamia has the intention of moving into one of the empty rooms. I believe this was all arranged.
Beats me. Is that woman moving in here?
Looks like it.
Was this brought up at a house meeting?
What's the point, Grover? Sharon spends most of her time at Steve's, and I'll be moving out soon.
You'll be moving? Where to?
I don't know yet.
Shall we start the meal?
For some reason, I'm not at all hungry. Aren't those Donna's plants? You're not throwing them away.
Well, we certainly aren't going to keep them. They look like they've been dead for years.
It began with isolated strangers in the big city, hostile and suspicious individuals surrounded by
Illyria Street Commune Incorporated. Community arts for every household. Resurrect the past with ISC. AM equals alternative media. Experience a great leap forward with communal products. EGLF-CP. Do your own thing. Eat frozen yogurt. Buy now. Pay for the rest of your life. So the enterprise remained unified until the founder's mysterious death. Did he simply vanish?
It's believed that the founder died in an accident in connection with his last interest, horses, but the causes are unknown.
Did his wife take over immediately following his demise?
Not immediately. Their son managed the business for a brief period, and I must add to his credit that he kept it unified. But in other respects, he left a mess by perpetuating innumerable disturbances and untold upheavals with his gang of motorcycle friends.
He was awarded some kind of medal for distinguished service, if I'm not wrong.
That's correct. He did heroic service in the Far East. He died in Iran.
Is it true that he died of a fever contracted from a drinking orgy?
I believe that story is apocryphal.
So the founder's wife salvaged the operation?
I wouldn't put it that way. The founder's wife did step in on 2 or 3 occasions during the stormy interregnum that followed the demise of the son.
So the real work of salvage...
That's correct. The real work of salvage is due entirely to the efforts of the 3 friends. I could almost say kinsmen of the founder.
Among whom you were the senior member.
Correct again. We established a partnership. However, centrifugal forces soon made themselves felt, and ultimately these forces tore asunder what had once been a unified enterprise.
2 of the partners established competing empires.
In actual fact, the competition was minimal. One of the partners set up alternative media enterprises, and specialized in all the lines related to self-publishing. But this was at a time when ISC was playing down the share of those lines, and at this point, we've gotten out of them altogether. The other partner detached the part of our activity that was inherently non-competitive, namely the educational sector. And that enterprise, the Alternative Schools Corporation, recently merged with an Institute of Behavioral Psychology. As you probably know, their largest contracts are with the Pentagon.
Is it true that both of the successor enterprises are now larger than the original home base?
It depends on what you mean by larger. ISC retains the vast wealth of accumulated tradition, and we continue to have an edge over the other two in the more, shall we say, philosophical and artistic manifestations.
I'm deeply grateful, Mr. Sanders.
On the contrary, the pleasure is all mine. Will I be able to see the material before publication?
I'll see to it. And the typescript?
Yes, of course.
Yes, Mr. Saunders?
Lamia, would you see to it that the gentleman from the news is given a typescript of the foundation tape?
Yes, Mr. Saunders.
What is it, Lamia?
Lyman, are you ready to hear the day's report now?
Shoot away, Lamia.
200 pairs of sandals, 76 with straps, assortments of pottery, mainly vases, amounting to 137 pounds, 48 paintings, half of them for the sepia version of number 19. A problem order for frozen yogurt, much too large for us to fill. A rush order from a natural foods cooperative in northern Wisconsin for 500 cases of frozen yogurt. And as you know, our total weekly production is 50 cases.